In the unforgiving desert of the American Southwest, where the sun bleaches bones white and the wind carries tales of blood and betrayal, there lived a woman whose very name struck terror into the hearts of settlers. They called her the Shadow of Death, the Apache huntress, but her real name was Naya, a name that meant to persist in her native tongue. And persist she did, through years of loss, through nights of planning, through days of hunting the men who had taken everything from her. But fate has a way of rewriting even the most determined stories. Sometimes, in the vast expanse of the desert, two souls destined never to meet find each other anyway. This is the story of how love bloomed in the most unlikely place, between a woman driven by vengeance and a man who had sworn never to raise his fist again. But before we begin, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. The morning sun cast long shadows across the red rocks of Arizona territory as Naya crouched behind a boulder, her dark eyes fixed on the camp below. 3 men sat around a dying fire, their horses tethered nearby. White men, settlers, the kind who had burned her village, scattered her people, and left her with nothing but rage and a sacred duty to her fallen brothers. Her weathered hands gripped the carved bone handle of her knife, the same blade that had already claimed 7 lives in the past month. Each death had been swift, precise, a warrior's justice delivered under the desert stars. The territorial newspapers had begun calling her the Apache Demon, but she felt no pride in the title, only the cold satisfaction of duty fulfilled. "Tomorrow we reach Tombstone," one of the men said, his voice carrying on the still air. "Heard there's good money in silver mining." Naya's jaw tightened. Tombstone, another town built on stolen Apache land, another place where white men would grow rich while her people died in reservations. She had sworn on her father's grave to make them pay, one by one, until the desert ran red with their blood. As she prepared to strike, a sound made her freeze. Hoofbeats, slow, deliberate, coming from the east. A lone rider approached the camp, and something about his posture, relaxed, unthreatening, made her hesitate. The rider was tall and lean, dressed in worn leather and faded denim. His hat was pulled low over his face, but she could see the careful way he kept his hands visible as he approached the camp. Most striking of all, he wore no gun belt. In this land where every man carried iron, he rode unarmed. "Mornin'," the stranger called out, his voice carrying a soft drawl. "Mind if I water my horse? Been riding since dawn." The 3 men exchanged glances. One of them, a bearded man with suspicious eyes, kept his hand near his pistol. "You alone, stranger?" "Just me and my horse, friend. Name's Elijah Cross." There was something in his voice, a weariness, a gentleness that seemed out of place in this harsh land. Naya found herself studying him more carefully. He moved with the fluid grace of a man comfortable in his own skin, but there was sadness in his posture, as if he carried invisible weights. "Strange to see a man without a gun in these parts," the bearded settler said. Elijah dismounted slowly, his movements deliberate. "Had my fill of guns, I reckon. Water's more useful than bullets, most days." As he led his horse to the small stream, Naya noticed the scars on his hands, rope burns, old cuts, the marks of hard labor. His face, partially visible beneath his hat, showed the weathered lines of a man who had seen too much. There was something different about him, something that made her hesitate when she should have struck. The moment passed. The men welcomed Elijah to their fire, shared their coffee, spoke of mundane things, weathered trails, the price of cattle. But Naya remained hidden, watching, her mission temporarily forgotten as she studied this strange, unarmed man who seemed to carry peace with him like a shield. When Elijah finally rode away, heading north toward the mountains, Naya found herself troubled. She had let opportunity slip through her fingers, and she couldn't understand why. The 3 settlers remained vulnerable, perfect targets for her justice. But the image of the peaceful stranger lingered in her mind, disrupting her focus. That night, as she made her cold camp in the rocks above the settlers, Naya stared at the stars and wondered what manner of man chose to ride unarmed through Apache country. What had brought him to this desolate place? And why did the memory of his gentle voice make her question, for the first time in months, the path she had chosen? The desert wind carried no answers, only the eternal whisper of sand against stone. But deep in her heart, something had shifted. The hunter had seen something that troubled her peace, something that made her wonder if there might be more to these white men than just enemies to be eliminated. 3 days later, Naya tracked another group of settlers heading toward the mining town of Bisbee. They were different from the others, harder men, with cruel eyes and loud voices that carried across the desert. She had watched them abuse their horses, seen them leave their trash scattered across the sacred springs. These were the kind of men who had destroyed her world without a second thought. She followed them for 2 days, learning their patterns, waiting for the right moment. They had made camp at a box canyon, thinking themselves safe. It would be easy to pick them off one by one as they slept. But as she crept closer through the pre-dawn darkness, she heard voices. An argument. Someone new had arrived. "I said you need to move on," came a familiar voice, gentle but firm. "This is a sacred place to the Apache. Show some respect." Naya's breath caught. The unarmed stranger, Elijah Cross, sat on his horse at the canyon's entrance, facing down 5 armed men. The morning light revealed his face clearly for the first time. Angular features weathered by sun and wind, eyes the color of storm clouds, and a mouth set in a line of quiet determination. Sacred place. The leader of the settlers spat in the dirt. "This is American territory now, stranger. We'll camp where we please." "The Apache might disagree," Elijah replied calmly, "and they have ways of expressing their displeasure." One of the men laughed harshly. "You mean that Apache that's been killing folks? Let her come. We're ready for her." Naya's hand moved to her knife, but Elijah's next words stopped her cold. "She's not a witch. She's a woman who's lost everything. Her family, her home, her people. Put yourself in her place. Wouldn't you fight back?" The silence that followed was deafening. Naya had never heard a white man speak of her with anything but fear or hatred. But this stranger spoke as if he understood, as if he saw her as more than a demon to be hunted. "You talk like an Apache lover," the leader sneered. "Maybe you're the one who needs to move on." "I'm not looking for trouble," Elijah said. "Just asking you to show respect for the dead." The dead. Naya's throat tightened. He knew this was a burial ground, knew why it was sacred. How could a white man understand what her own people had forgotten in their forced march to the reservations? The confrontation escalated quickly. The settlers, emboldened by their numbers, began to close in on Elijah. Still, he made no move toward a weapon. When the leader drew his gun, Elijah simply sat straighter in his saddle, his hands resting calmly on his pommel. "You're either brave or stupid, stranger," the gunman said. "Which is it?" "Maybe both," Elijah replied with a sad smile. "But I've seen enough killing to last a lifetime. If you're going to shoot me, do it. But I won't draw on you." The raw honesty in his voice struck Naya like a physical blow. Here was a man who had faced death so many times that he had made peace with it. What kind of life had he lived? What ghosts haunted him? The settlers were confused by his refusal to fight. They had expected fear, pleading, or aggression. Instead, they faced a man who seemed to welcome whatever fate they chose to deal him. It unnerved them. "You're touched in the head," the leader said, but he lowered his gun. "We'll move on. But if we see you again, stranger, you won't be so lucky." As the settlers packed up their camp, muttering among themselves, Elijah remained motionless on his horse. Only when they were completely gone did he dismount and walk to the small stone cairn that marked the burial site. He removed his hat and stood in silence for a long moment, his head bowed in respect. Naya watched from the rocks above, her heart pounding. She had come here to kill, but instead she had witnessed something she had never seen before. A white man showing genuine reverence for Apache sacred ground. Not the hollow gestures of politicians or the fearful appeasement of settlers, but true respect. When Elijah finally remounted and rode away, Naya followed at a distance. She told herself it was strategic. Perhaps he would lead her to more targets. But deep down she knew the truth. She was drawn to this mysterious man who carried no weapons, but faced down armed killers, with nothing but words and courage. For the first time since beginning her hunt, she had let white men escape without spilling blood. The realization should have filled her with shame, but instead, she felt something she had almost forgotten: curiosity. Who was Elijah Cross? What had made him different from the others? And why did his presence make her question everything she believed about the white man's heart? Naya followed Elijah for 3 days, keeping her distance, moving like a ghost through the desert scrub. She watched him make camp alone each night, saw him share his water with thirsty wildlife, observed how he spoke gently to his horse, as if it were a friend. There was a loneliness about him that called to the loneliness in her own heart. On the 3rd evening, as he made camp beside a small spring, she decided to test him. Moving through the gathering darkness, she positioned herself where he would see her, a shadow against the rocks, armed and dangerous. She wanted to see how he would react when faced with the Apache huntress herself. Elijah was tending his small fire when she stepped into the light. His hand didn't move toward a weapon. He carried none, but his body tensed with recognition. He had heard the stories, seen the descriptions. He knew who she was. "You're her," he said quietly. "The woman they call the Apache demon." "I am Naya," she replied, her voice carrying the authority of her ancestors. "I am the daughter of Chief Ahiga, the sister of warriors who will never again see the sunrise. I am the one who brings justice to the murderers of my people." She expected fear, pleading, or angry defiance. Instead, Elijah slowly stood and removed his hat, treating her with the same respect he had shown the burial ground. "I'm honored to meet you, Naya," he said. "I'm sorry for your losses." The simple sincerity of his words hit her like a physical blow. When had anyone last spoken her name with respect? When had a white man acknowledged her pain instead of simply dismissing her as a savage? "You know why I'm here," she said, her hand resting on her knife. "I reckon I do. You've been hunting men like me. Men like you." She studied his face in the firelight. "You are not like the others." "I'm white. I'm on Apache land. That makes me your enemy, doesn't it?" The question hung in the air between them. Naya had killed men for less, but looking at Elijah now, she found herself unable to see him as just another settler. He stood before her unarmed, unafraid, treating her as an equal rather than a threat to be eliminated. "Why do you carry no weapons?" she asked. Elijah's face grew distant. "I carried guns once. Used them too. Killed men in the war, Confederate, Union. Didn't matter by the end. Then I came west and killed more men over cattle, over land, over things that seemed important at the time." He met her eyes. "I decided I killed enough. And if I kill you now, then I'll die. But I won't kill you to prevent it." His absolute certainty shook her. Here was a man who had chosen peace even at the cost of his own life. It was a kind of courage she had never encountered before. "You saw the men at the sacred place," she said. "You could have ridden away. Could have. But those were your people's graves. They deserved respect. How do you know of Apache ways?" "I've been alone in this desert for 3 years. You learn to listen to the land, to understand what's sacred and what's not. Your ancestors speak to those who take the time to hear them." Naya circled him slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. But Elijah remained still, his hands at his sides, his expression calm. There was no deception in him, no hidden agenda. He was exactly what he appeared to be, a man seeking peace in a violent world. "My father taught me that a warrior's greatest strength is knowing when not to fight," she said finally. "But the white man killed my father, burned our village, scattered my people to the reservations, where they die slowly of broken hearts." "I know. I've seen the reservations. They're a slow death for a proud people." "Then you understand why I hunt." "I understand the pain. But killing every white man you meet won't bring your family back, Naya. It won't heal the wound in your heart. It gives me purpose. Does it give you peace?" The question struck at the core of her being. Peace. When had she last felt peace? Not since the attack on her village. Not since she had taken up the knife in her quest for justice. Every death had brought a moment of satisfaction, but no lasting peace. "I don't seek peace," she said. "I seek justice." Maybe they're the same thing. They stood in silence for a long moment, the fire crackling between them. Finally, Elijah spoke again. I'm heading north to the mountains. There's a small valley there where I've been building a cabin. It's quiet, peaceful. If you ever tire of hunting, you'd be welcome there. You would invite your enemy to your home. You're not my enemy, Naya. You're a woman in pain, same as I'm a man in pain. Maybe we could find some peace together. The offer hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Naya felt something stirring in her chest, not the cold fire of vengeance, but something warmer, more frightening. Hope. I have work to finish, she said finally. I know, but the offer stands. Without another word, Elijah settled back beside his fire. He didn't watch her as she melted back into the darkness, didn't try to follow her movements. He simply trusted that she would do what she felt was right. For the first time in months, Naya retreated without taking a life. As she made her way back to her own camp, she found herself thinking not of death, but of a quiet valley in the mountains where a lonely man was building a cabin. The thought terrified her more than any army of settlers ever could. 2 weeks passed, and Naya's hunting continued, but her heart was no longer in it. She tracked 3 more groups of settlers, positioned herself for perfect kills, and then hesitated. Each time, she found herself thinking of Elijah's words, of his offer, of the peace she had glimpsed in his storm-gray eyes. The newspapers reported that the Apache demon had disappeared. Settlers grew bold again, venture into areas they had avoided. But Naya wasn't gone. She was wrestling with the most difficult decision of her life. She found herself riding north, toward the mountains, telling herself she was scouting new hunting grounds. But when she crested a ridge and saw the valley below, she knew she had been lying to herself. She had come to find Elijah Cross. The valley was everything he had described, green and peaceful, with a clear stream running through it. She could see his cabin, half-built but sturdy, nestled among the pines. Smoke rose from a small chimney, and his horse grazed peacefully in a meadow. It looked like paradise after the harsh desert she had called home. She watched from the ridge for 2 days, torn between approach and retreat. On the 3rd morning, she woke to find Elijah sitting by her hidden camp, 2 cups of coffee steaming between them. Thought you might be getting tired of cold camps, he said simply. How did you find me? I didn't. I just figured if you were going to watch my valley, you'd pick the best vantage point. This is it. Despite herself, Naya felt a smile tug at her lips. You are not what I expected in a white man. Maybe that's the problem, expectations. We see what we expect to see instead of what's really there. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. It was the most peaceful moment Naya had experienced in years. I killed a man yesterday, she said finally. I know. I heard the shots. He was different. Cruel. He had Apache scalps on his belt. Elijah's jaw tightened. Some men deserve killing. But not all. No, not all. Another silence fell between them. Finally, Naya spoke the words that had been tearing at her heart. I don't know who I am without the hunt. It's been my purpose, my identity. Without it, I'm just empty. No, Elijah said firmly. You're Naya, daughter of Chief Ahiga. You're a woman of strength and honor. The hunt doesn't define you. It's just something you did because you had to. And if I stop, if I let the murderers of my people go unpunished, then maybe you find another way to honor their memory. Maybe you live well instead of dying for revenge. They spent the day together, and Naya found herself talking about things she had never shared with anyone. Her childhood, her family, her dreams before the violence began. Elijah listened without judgment, sharing his own stories of loss and redemption. By evening, she felt as though she had known him for years instead of weeks. Why did you really come west? She asked as they watched the sunset. I was running from myself, from the things I'd done. I thought if I could get far enough away, I could leave the ghosts behind. Did it work? For a while. But ghosts follow you wherever you go. The only way to escape them is to stop running and face them. And if they're too strong, then you find someone to help you carry the weight. That night, Naya lay under the stars and made her choice. She couldn't bring back her family, couldn't undo the wrongs committed against her people, but she could choose life over death, hope over despair, love over hatred. When morning came, she walked down to the valley. Elijah was working on his cabin, fitting logs with patient precision. He looked up as she approached, and she saw hope kindle in his eyes. "I have a condition," she said. "If I stay, if I try this peace you speak of, I need to know that some of the worst men will still face justice. Not all white men are evil, but some are. Those ones will face together," Elijah said. "There's a difference between justice and revenge. One heals, the other just spreads the wound." "You would stand with me? Against your own people?" "I'd stand with justice. I'd stand with you." Naya looked at the half-built cabin, at the peaceful valley, at the man who had offered her something she had never dared to hope for. She thought of her father, of what he would say if he could see her now. She thought he would understand that sometimes the greatest victory is laying down your weapons. "I'll need to go back," she said, "to the reservation, to tell my people what I've learned." "I'll go with you if you want." "It will be dangerous. Many Apache still see all white men as enemies. Then they'll have to learn what I learned, that seeing people as they really are is the only way to heal the wounds between us." As they stood together in the morning light, Naya felt something she had forgotten was possible. Hope for the future. The hunt was over, but her real journey was just beginning. She was no longer the Apache demon, bringer of death. She was Naya, daughter of Chief Ahiga, walking toward a future where love might indeed rewrite the stories written in blood. In the distance, the mountains stood eternal and peaceful, witnesses to the end of one story and the beginning of another. The desert would remember the Apache huntress, but the valley would know only Naya, the woman who chose love over vengeance and found, in the arms of a lonely cowboy, the peace that had eluded her for so long. 6 months later, a small group of Apache leaders rode into the valley, their faces stern with the weight of difficult decisions. They had come to see for themselves the woman who had abandoned her sacred hunt for the promise of peace with a white man. They found Naya tending a garden beside the completed cabin, her hands dirty with soil instead of blood. Elijah worked nearby, building a fence that would protect their crops from wandering deer. The sight of the Apache huntress performing such domestic tasks shocked the visitors, but they could not deny the peace that seemed to emanate from her. "Sister," said Tarak, an elder who had known her father, "the reservation is hard. Our people suffer. Some say we should take up the warpath again." "And what do you say?" Naya asked, setting down her hoe. "I say we need leaders who understand both war and peace. You have walked both paths. Will you come home and help us find a way forward?" Naya looked at Elijah, who nodded encouragingly. They had discussed this possibility many times. The reservation needed advocates, teachers, people who could bridge the gap between the Apache world and the white man's world. "I will come," she said, "but not as the Apache huntress, as a woman who has learned that understanding is stronger than hatred, that building is more powerful than destroying." "And him?" Tarak gestured toward Elijah. "Will he come too? If the people will accept him. He has much to offer, knowledge of the white man's ways, skills in building and farming, and a heart that seeks justice without demanding blood." The negotiations took days. Some Apache rejected the idea of working with any white man. Others, desperate for hope, were willing to try anything. In the end, it was Naya's reputation as a warrior that convinced them. If the Apache huntress could find peace with a white man, perhaps there was hope for a different kind of future. Elijah Cross became the first white man to live among the Apache as an equal, not a conqueror or a prisoner. He helped them build better homes, taught them new farming techniques, and served as a translator when dealing with government officials. Most importantly, he showed by example that not all white men were enemies. Naya found her new purpose in teaching the children, not just Apache children, but also the mixed-blood children who belonged to neither world completely. She taught them to be proud of their heritage while learning to navigate the changing world around them. She showed them that strength came not from hatred but from understanding, not from vengeance but from wisdom. The Apache huntress became a legend, but Naya became something more important, a bridge between worlds, a living proof that love could triumph over hatred, that peace was possible even in the most divided times. And in the quiet evenings, when the day's work was done and the stars came out over the desert, Naya and Elijah would sit together and remember the journey that had brought them here. Two wounded souls who had found healing in the most unlikely place, in each other's arms, in the promise of a future written not in blood, but in hope. The desert remembered the Apache huntress, but it also remembered the woman who chose love over vengeance, who proved that even the deepest wounds could heal when tended with patience, understanding, and the courage to see beyond the surface to the human heart beneath. In the end, that was Naya's greatest victory. Not the men she had killed, but the life she had chosen to live, the love she had dared to accept, and the peace she had found in the arms of a lonely cowboy who had taught her that the strongest warriors are those who know when to lay down their weapons and reach for something better. If you like this story, leave your opinion in the comments and, of course, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Big hug and see you soon.